Hey everyone, welcome. I'm really excited to introduce Howard Rheingold. As many of you know, I've been really having a good time reading over a lot of your materials. All right, I just want to take a moment and thank our sponsor, ClassFlow, for this event, and of course, Blackboard Collaborate for allowing us to All right, so the very fun map slide, I think you all probably know the drill, but down on the second tool down on your toolbar, you can select a pointer. So you'll see on the left side of your screen, and you can point out where you're logging in from. And you can also go ahead and write in the chat where you're at, what's the weather like, where would you rather be? Vacation, probably. Excellent. All right, and I'm in Western North Carolina currently, and it's finally spring here, and it's beautiful. So actually, I wish I was on vacation, but I don't necessarily need to go anywhere. So excellent. We've got somebody from Australia. Great to have you. All right, thanks everyone. So I'm going to turn it over to Howard. And Howard, thanks again for being in this conference and presenting tonight. And I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So I'm going to try to go very quickly over the way my use of social media and my understanding of pedagogy have co-evolved over the last 10 years. And it's going to be a really fast fly over the territory. I think most people here are pretty familiar with a lot of the things I'm talking about, so I won't have to take a lot of time on elementary explanations, and I hope to have some time for us to converse when I'm done. So if you think I'm going too fast, just let Amy know, and she'll let me know. So I just want to emphasize at the beginning that although I really started teaching because I didn't think 10 years ago that universities or any schools at all were really covering the issues that were raised by the use by students of what are now called social media. The name didn't exist back then. So I want to just emphasize that this is all about what I've learned about teaching and learning, and the media, the technology is an important part of it, but I don't lose sight of the pedagogy. I'm a big fan of the idea that was presented broadly in the book by John C. Brown and Doug Thomas called A New Culture of Learning. So very briefly, just want to touch on some of the aspects of that culture of learning. So the book, I bet most or all of you have read this. If not, you've got to treat in store because I think they do a good job of covering the territory. Learner-centered, we really have come from a long era of curriculum-centered or teacher-centered. And of course, none of the things that I'm talking about are inventions of the social media age. It's just that the technology enables us to do some things that we weren't able to do before. It's more and more self-directed. The role of the instructor is still important, but more and more people have understood that schools no longer have the monopoly on learning that they used to have. There are all kinds of resources that are available online for learning, and people can direct their own learning. And I think learning to direct their own learning is one of the meta lessons that we ought to be thinking about. It's also increasingly social and peer-to-peer, whether we're talking about the classroom or online. And I'm going to end up talking about what I've been calling peeragogy towards the end of this. Inquiry-based, there's still knowledge, but the delivery of knowledge in packages is giving way to collaboratively inquiring into the issues that give rise to that knowledge. I've discovered that I know what I want to get across to the students, but when I shut up and let them discover it, they seem to be more engaged with it and seem to retain it better than if I tell them what I think they ought to learn. Collaborative, by that I mean that we work together on projects. It's not so much individual work as it always has been, although that's a big part of it, but more and more collaborative and cooperative. And I make the distinction between collaborative and cooperative. When I ask my learners to commit themselves to co-learning, to being responsible, at least in part, for everybody else's learning as well as their own. And of course it's networked. We are no longer confined to the classroom or the textbook. We've got all kinds of resources and all kinds of people available out there. I wanted to note that I've been thinking about the way technology and digital media could enable this kind of new culture of learning for a long time. In 1995, I was asked by the NEC Corporation, a Japanese electronics manufacturer, to help them create an exhibit for a big exposition that demonstrated what the University of the Future might look like. So this was the mock-up. I didn't do the art. I did hire a designer to do the art, but my idea was that people would be able to find mentors and other learners and courses and all kinds of media and places to discuss those online, and they would have their own archives of media. They would have video. 1995, I think the modem speed was about 22,500 bits per second, but we knew that the broadband was out there somewhere in the future. And in my mock-up, I had these round tables where people could have asynchronous discussions, what we call message boards or forums today, and that I envisioned that each post could have HTML in it. You could embed video, you could embed graphics. I think it must have cost about $1 million for NEC to build a working model of this with fiber optics and high definition video. I never would have believed in 1995 that I would someday be using media that were for the most part free, that would do almost all these things. So in 2008, I entered a competition that was sponsored by Haystack and the MacArthur Foundation, and I asked for some help building a social media collaboratory, so social media classroom. I started teaching courses on social media, and it only made sense to use social media to discuss the issue. And my students noted, I would say complained, that not only were they learning new things, that's what you do in courses, they were using all of these media that they had never used before. That was new. And each one, each wiki or forum or blog had a different interface and different login. So what the Haystack competition funded was hiring a developer to create a browser-based platform in which wikis, forums, blogs, we no longer use chat rooms in there. We've replaced that with mind maps, social bookmarks, within the same browser. You log in once and you click on the different colored tabs, and that brings you to one of the different media. The Drupal-based platform is getting a little old, and the developer that I've been working with since 2008 is developing a new one that ought to be available in the next couple of months. So look for my announcements of that on Facebook and Twitter. So I want to talk both about the media we use and the pedagogical affordances. And I want to talk in terms of the voice. So this is a forum. We all know what forums are. For me, forums are the best way for a group of people to have conversations over a period of time, over a number of different subjects. And just as I had wished for in 1995, each post, you can embed a video in it, or a graphic, or links. So there are multimedia conversations that continue, and I emphasize with my students that this is about the voice of the group. This is about continuing those conversations that get exciting right before the bell rings during our classroom meetings, but continuing them during the week between our face-to-face meetings. And by voice of the group, I mean that it's not about the individual posts, it's about the conversation. And each thread ought to add up to more than the sum of the individual posts. And of course, there's the blogs. And I use this as an example to show that you can also embed videos in blogs if you want. And for my learners, the blogs are about individual reflective voice. Now, it's not like the old days where you wrote your paper and only the teacher saw it. So we're blogging for and with each other, and we're commenting on each other's blogs. But it's the individual blogger who chooses the agenda and decides what to write about. I also emphasize reflection. It's interesting, I have college students. Reflection is a common English word, but apparently it's not something that they are really required to do during the years that they are working to get into college. So asking them to reflect for each other is new to a lot of them. So forum, group voice, blogs, individual voice. There are lots of conversations that happen in comment threads around the blogs. And in some cohorts, those are where the more lively conversations happen, and in some cohorts, it's the forums. So it's really another opportunity for the learners to choose which way they want to converse. Also use a wiki. The syllabus is a wiki, and we also use it for group exercises. And of course, a wiki is a place where you can create web pages easily and link to them and collaborate on writing and see the collaboration in terms of looking at the revision history and see what others have done. I found that this requires a lot of scaffolding. Students are not used to collaborating on creating documents, and they're very averse to editing each other at first. And we use social bookmarks. I do introduce students to Digo and Delicious, but for the beginning, we do this within our social media classroom. So we have a version of that social bookmarking. It's got a bookmarklet that enables people to find things and share them with others in the class. So this is what the class at Berkeley looked like when I first started teaching there. I taught at Berkeley and Stanford for some years, and in recent years, only at Stanford. And I'll have to confess that although I know the subject matter well and I'm comfortable with it, I didn't want the students to know how little I knew about teaching when I started. I didn't really have any training in it. I learned that if I began to open up and be vulnerable in the sense of saying, okay, I'm not sure that this is the best way to do it. What do you think? If I repeatedly asked the students what was going on, what was working and what wasn't working, eventually I got some help. And we eventually moved to this. So this is also at Berkeley. The difference. Nobody's on their laptops here, and everybody's in a circle. And you're not seeing me stand up, you're seeing one of the students stand up. So one of the things that evolved was enabling students to choose up teams and to co-teach with me. I teach a 3-hour-long class, so we need to have a lot of different activities, and one of those is for a group of learners, 2 or 3 or 4 at the most, to sign up in advance, meet with me, and come up with a plan, not to present everything in a particular module, but to find something that really matters to them and to come up with activities that will engage the other students around them. And I emphasize that while this particular course is really all about cooperation and co-learning, cooperative learning, I did want them to compete with each other to come up with the most clever and engaging co-teaching sessions, which indeed they do. And it's always fun and a surprise, and the students always want to do more and to start doing it earlier. One of the things that we ended up doing was creating a lexicon. So the co-teaching team, their job during their session is to identify words and phrases from the texts, from our conversations, and put them on the wiki. And then during the week between that class session and the next class session, it's up to everybody to kind of Wikipedia style edit that page, to format, to define, to add links. And at the beginning of the next class, I would show the revision history so that people could see who is doing what on this. I also ask the students to team up and to make mind maps. For one thing, I want at the beginning of class to look at the big picture of what we talked about the previous week. Because in survey courses like mine, you move so rapidly through a lot of material that I want to connect what we talked about last week to what we talked about this week. I also want to kind of take an elevation view and look at the connections between all of the different texts and the issues that we discussed. So different mind mapping teams mind map each week, and here are just a few of them just to give you an idea of the kind of ingenuity that the students develop. They can draw them out with colored pens, as I did here, and scan them. All kinds of different ways of portraying material. This student was adept at Photoshop, so she used Photoshop to create it. I also present the syllabus before the first class meeting as a wiki and as a concept map and as a Prezi. Exactly the same material, but I'm trying to demonstrate to them one of the things that I'm setting up as a learning objective, which is to have different lenses, different frames, different ways of looking at social media. So these are different ways of looking at the syllabus itself. So a few years ago, 2011, just sort of on a lark one night, I tweeted out on Twitter who would be interested in taking an online course with me for $100. We'll do it in 5 or 6 weeks. So the next morning, I had a bunch of people who were interested in doing it. So we used a social media classroom, and then something interesting happened. So they pay me for this through PayPal, and I found that $100 wasn't quite right. Wasn't enough. I didn't want to charge so much that people couldn't afford it. I also didn't want to have more than 20 or 30 students in a cohort because I really wanted to form a learning community, both in the face-to-face classroom and in the online classroom. I want people to get to know each other and to form a community and not just be students of mine, but students and teachers of each other. I developed a habit when emailing my college students of starting it by greeting them with esteemed students. And for some reason, when I started doing Rheingold U, the online courses, my first emails said, esteemed co-learners. And the reaction from that was fantastic. People really take that seriously. And again, the reactions of the learners shaped the pedagogy. So more and more of the online courses, as well as my face-to-face courses, are about co-learning. So we use all of the media that I've described to you, the forums, the blogs, the wikis, the social bookmarks. We also use what was called Illuminate back then, the same medium we're using now, for weekly face-to-face meetings. And I found that that was pretty important for these people who are literally on 3 or 4 different continents and probably never will meet. Having that sense of video presence is important. And we also learned that we could do things together online. We're not doing it during this session, but I found that if I set up a whiteboard and ask people to sign up for different roles, that we can do things together during the live sessions. I ask people to search. So we're talking about things. Some of those things you can search on and find a good link and put it into the text chat. I ask the contextualizers to collect those URLs and to then turn over to the curators a contextualized URL. To take that URL, look at it, and like a good blogger does, add 2 or 3 or 4 sentences of context that describe what that's about. And the curators then put that on a wiki page, and the summarizers summarize the text chat so that we end up having a wiki page from each live session that includes a lot of the knowledge. And I think it's not so much about having a cheat sheet that you can look at later to remind yourself. I think it's about the co-construction of meaning out of the different threads that come up in the live sessions. I do lecture. We do have discussions. We do have questions and answers. And of course, we do the lexicon exercise here as well. So one of the things that we do is use the whiteboard. I really like the whiteboard on Collaborate because you can't really see who is doing what. So I think is the whiteboard live to people right now? Let me just give it a check here. Yeah. So go ahead and scribble on this whiteboard if you'd like. The idea here is that when I get a group of people, it is now. Okay, good. One of the things that I adopted from Steve Hargadon was doing the map exercise at the beginning. And when we do the map exercise for Rheingold U, as is often true with Steve's sessions, people are on 3 or 4 continents. They're in South America, they're in Europe, they're in North America, they're in Asia, they're in Australia. By asking people to kind of do a brainstorm mind map together, it kind of tunes them into a kind of a group consciousness. So I ask people to put up keywords and then put boxes around the most important ones and circles around the ones that are the second most important, and then move them around and connect them. And what's really interesting about this is that, you see things appear, and then you see them move around, and things get placed inside of other things, and connections get made and remade, and nobody really knows who is doing that. So it's really a reflection of the group. It's not really meant to be a comprehensive mind map of the topic we're talking about, but I do ask people to volunteer for a team to go ahead and refine the mind map. So quite often they use mind mapping software to take our brainstorm mind map and to reflect on it and to create something for everybody else that's in a more refined condition. So that's one of the processes that goes on, is a meaning making and dot connecting and refining of going through the material and then trying to juxtapose the material, connect the material, trying to prioritize it, hierarchically or network-like to play with it. So now we're beginning to see that. Now, so I started out talking about 1995. I started teaching in universities in 2004. Started using the social media classroom in 2008. Things have been moving really very quickly. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the proliferation of platforms, and these are just a few representatives. There are dozens of these. Maybe there are hundreds of these, of places where people can go to learn from and with each other. Infotension, Kate, let's take that up, because I think we'll have time to talk about things, and I'll be happy to talk about that as well. So this got me to thinking about what's the next step. To me, the first step was to use the media to empower learners to become co-learners, and for me to indeed be the guide on the side, but to learn to shut up more and allow the students to be teachers. Some of them find that a little uncomfortable at the beginning, but I'd say universally they get excited by it by the time that they've done that. There's a little bit of stage fright about it, but once they see that they're actually running things, they get very excited about it. And in fact, the feedback I get every year in my anonymous evaluations is, can we do that earlier? So to me, it's always a balance between, I have to model this and I have to show them how to do it before I can turn it over to them. So it depends on how quickly they take to it. So this is the question that I started asking myself. What if we eliminate the teacher entirely and have it just be a group of co-learners? What if if you're an individual self-learner, I'd say if you ask a 14-year-old today, how do you configure a table saw, or how do you edit video, or how do you configure a server, they will go to YouTube and find probably another 14-year-old who's done a video on it. There's a lot of resources for motivated self-learners out there. But what about a group? What about if a group decides that there's a subject that they want to learn together? How would they do that? So I took the opportunity. Well, I was also motivated when I saw this on Kickstarter. KeoStart had asked people to back a project, writing a book called Don't Go Back to School, a handbook for learning anything. And what it is really is a collection of interviews with people who have learned things on their own. So that set up the next experiment of what I ended up calling Peeragogy. In January 2011, I was asked to, I think it was 2011, asked to deliver what they call the Regents Lecture at UC Berkeley. And that consists of giving a lecture, but also meeting with their faculty and their students for a couple of weeks to do something. And I proposed that we actually build something. So I told them the story that I told you, and I proposed that we think about creating a handbook for groups of self-learners, and that we do it having some face-to-face seminars. We did it at the Berkeley Center for New Media on the UC Berkeley campus, but I also had a laptop on the table that was open to Illuminate, to the same forum we're using now, and I used Twitter and Facebook to invite people anywhere in the world to participate with our planning session. And then we had so we met face-to-face, and then we had an online session a week later, and then we had another face-to-face meeting, second face-to-face meeting a week after that. And what was interesting was that over the first month or so, all of the faculty and graduate students who I had met with in person sort of dropped out of the project, but a bunch of people I didn't know from all over the world. The principals were in the UK, Mexico, Brazil, Canada, Australia. They began to take this on. So we started out using Social Media Classroom, and we really didn't frame it this way, but discovered that what we were doing was an experiment in pedagogy. So the question is, if a group of learners wants to learn a subject, how do they find and qualify resources, whether they're texts or videos, online or offline, and then how do they arrange those? Do they make a syllabus? Do they create a learning space? What media do they use? How do they divide the labor of facilitating learning sessions? What are the learning activities? How do they assess their learning? None of these are particularly highly technical, but most people who are not teachers or students of learning don't know a lot about this. So the idea was to pull these together into a handbook. We had regular live sessions. We went through a lot of different media. We started out with a wiki. We had our weekly live sessions. People had sidebar sessions using Google Hangout. And then we ended up creating a handbook using text and video using WordPress. Some people were very adept at WordPress and taught the other co-learners. So if you go to peeragogy.org, you will find that there is a website. It's free. Also on that website are links to download the PDF for free. Or if you want to pay $20, you can get it from Amazon, or I'm not sure what the price is, but you can also get it from Lulu. So you can get bound books, and there are still weekly meetings, and it's still open. So if any of you look in the handbook and you see something that's missing, then contact me and I will connect you with the group, and we'll talk about adding that. We just added something by an instructional technology PhD in Germany who wrote a piece about the role of fun in learning. So that seems to go right along with everything else. More recently, I have moved beyond just the social media classroom because I'm one of those people who were seduced by DS-106. I bet you most of you know about that. If not, take a look, ds106.us. Jim Groom and Alan Levine really held my hand and helped me set this up, but they made a strong case that learners today ought to learn on the open web, that they should use the media and affordances of the web for their learning, and that they should do it in the open to engage with other learners and to engage with networks. And that's really what the web is about. So we're kind of bringing that pedagogy together with the way the web works. So I have asked my students in the last year and in future years to create their own domain and WordPress instance. The Jim Groom and his associates at the University of Mary Washington have created a hub. It's Reclaim Hosting. I think somebody, maybe Jackie knows what the exact name of that is, but if you are an educator or a student, for $13, you can get a domain for a year, and you can get a server space in which you can install and configure WordPress and MediaWiki. They helped me set this up. So I set up the WordPress instance as the syllabus, as the hub with pull-down menus, but also as an aggregator like DS106 for all of the students' blogs. So the students blog and comment, and those blogs and comments and the conversations around Twitter hashtags are aggregated in the course hub. We also used forums. I used Discourse, which is great. So this is an example of a student blog. And so the blogs are open to the world, and it's about developing a public voice. It's not just an individual voice now, but a public voice. We set up, used MediaWiki, and I set up Discourse. So discourse.org has a great new kind of forum. I like it a lot, but the two times that I've done this, the students always say, why can't we do this in a Facebook group? Facebook does not index conversation threads very well, but that's where all of the students live. So we set up a private Facebook group, and I put a link to it from the syllabus. Again, here we're talking about social media in my course. We're trying to think about it analytically, and they're saying, we don't like the forum so much, we want to use Facebook. So that's all about student empowerment. I happen to think this course is better. They disagree. Let's go with what they suggest and see how that works. So this summer, I'm working with the Digital Media and Learning Group at UC Irvine. Many of you know the DML Central.net hub and the Connected Learning webinars that they have. I'm working with them to organize a get-together this summer in which a small invited group, people that you probably know, Michael Wesch, Jim Groom, Jonathan Worth from Fonar, Lisa Nakamura from FemTechNet are going to join us, and we're going to spend a few days creating the framework for an open course on open learning. Distinguish this kind of co-learning, learning community, using material online from MOOCs. It is open learning. It can be massive. DS106 and Fonar have many people participating, but it's a different model than the MOOC model. We want to encourage educators to begin adopting this model and experimenting with it. So in the fall, we're going to create an open course that, based on what we figure out this summer, you are all invited to participate. I will ask Steve to tell his friends about that, and we hope to enlist as many educators as possible in creating their own WordPress hubs, or using other media if that's what they want to use, and to use some of the principles that have been discovered by people like Jim Groom and Jonathan Worth and Lisa Nakamura and myself. So hope to see some of you there in the online course. So that's a really fast run through. I did that in 40 minutes so that we could have some time to talk. So let's open the floor, and why don't we create a new page here and do with this page what you like. One of the things that sometimes I've seen others do is ask people to do just a really quick word association. I've been talking for 40 minutes. What sticks with you? Put the words up there. Format them. Move them around. Connect them. Put illustrations, scribble, please feel free. And if you haven't done it before, you can format your text. There's the A with the lines. That's for long text. Use the A without the lines if you don't have long text, and then you can type something, and you can change the size of that if you want, and you can change the color of it if you want, and then you can click on that little pointer tool at the top and move it around, and you want to make lines that connect things. So anyway, I'm going to take my demonstration away and let you have at it while we're talking. How sure do you keep activities tied to standards? Well, you know, that's not an issue that I particularly pay attention to. I know it's an important issue for others. I just fly under the radar at Stanford, and I have to grade, but I've had it with grading. That's a whole other subject. So, questions? Amy, did you identify some questions from the chat, or does anybody else just want to jump on to audio and video and ask me a question?
Yeah, Kate, you had a couple of great questions that you put in the chat, and if you would like to retype them, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, I've turned on the mic permissions for the room, so you can just click the talk button once to turn your mic on, and then just go ahead and click it one more time when you're done asking a question.
It sometimes takes a minute for this to happen, but I find that if I call for questions and I'm silent long enough, somebody comes up with one. You don't have to go audible. If you've got a question that you can type it in.
And Howard, I'm going to scroll up in the chat and see if I can recall some of the ones that we missed earlier.
Peggy, there's not a link for the online course yet, but I teach college students, but there are high school teachers. I profiled a couple of high school teachers who are hacking the curriculum. David Preston in Central California. Don, what's his last name, in Iowa. You know, when you can let high school students create their own curriculum, and they will do a great job at it. I'm all for introducing co-learning in high school. Don Wettrick is his name, and I profiled both of them in my DML Central, so I'm going to look that up. So here's one.
This is from Kate earlier. I just typed it. I just copied it in the chat there.
Okay. Let's see. How do you make the online challenges that disabled adult students face? So, you know, that's something that I'm not going to claim any expertise in, but I do think that having a variety of media, having asynchronous media that enables people to sit and think with nobody looking at them and take their time to type, or if they prefer to create an audio or a video, affords different learning styles. I have not dealt with disabled students in the face-to-face classroom, but in the purely online class, I think that there are a lot of opportunities for people to participate in ways that maybe they would not have in a face-to-face classroom. Okay, now I wanted to look at the other high school teacher. Okay, and this is the other one. So the question about high school, I think if you look at both of these, you'll see that you can turn the learning over to students and they do great things. Elaborate on synchronous versus asynchronous benefits and detriments. Well, I think you can see that the synchronous session involves a little bit of multitasking. More multitasking when I ask people to take on different roles and correct words for the lexicon and mind map. And that is definitely, speaking of infotension, a skill that needs to be learned. And of course, we don't really multitask, we task switch. There's a cost to task switching. But I found that people can learn to pay attention to the text chat and talk with each other and draw on the whiteboard together. So I think one of the benefits of the synchronous media is the sense of being with other people, and the audio and the video definitely helps with that. The asynchronous media, you don't have to be there at a certain time. And of course, when you've got people in different time zones, it helps for them to have a way to participate when they don't have to show up at 3 in the morning their time. So I think just the asynchronous media also enables people to be thoughtful and have conversations that continue for a while. There's a lot of energy and exchange and spontaneity in the face-to-face classroom and in the synchronous sessions that you don't get any other way. But I think with the asynchronous conversations, especially as they take place over days and weeks, you really have an opportunity to build something that you can't really get in the face-to-face or the synchronous environment. Yes, there's a class in your pajamas issue as well. Wear what you want, do it when you want. Take your time composing a post. I do find that students who are very quiet in face-to-face classrooms sometimes really blossom when you give them the opportunity to blog or participate in forums. And an exercise that I am adopting, I picked up from Amy Burvall, who has a theory of knowledge course in Hawaii, is to have let's say you've got 20 in a classroom, to ask 10 of them to volunteer to have an out loud discussion of the text, of questions that they come up with. One of the things that I ask the learners to do is to come into class with questions about each of the texts, and we take their questions as the basis for our conversations, and they make a circle of their chairs, and then there's an outer circle around them of people who are commenting on the conversation via a hashtag, a tweet chat. And sometimes people are more comfortable with one or the other. I ask them to switch so that they have experience with both. And then there's a moderator who will field questions from the back channel to the front channel. So you can mix the media, the fishbowl, yeah. Okay, infotension. How does it relate to our ability or inability to multitask? Well, the late Cliff Nass, who was a great guy, whose office was down the hall from me, really sort of nailed the issue of multitasking in the research that he did a couple of years ago with media multitasking, and demonstrated that that people who think they're more efficient because they're multitasking are wrong. That in fact, multitasking degrades performance on the individual tasks. I talked to him about this, and one of the questions was, well, what if the different streams of information that you are switching between are all related to the same task? That's research that he had not done and nobody has done. You know, to try to isolate the variables, the kind of research that NAS did was look at a red dot while reading gray text. So in a sense, it's kind of a toy problem. Also, the multitasking experiments, and it's been replicated several times, indicate that 90% or more of people are not effective multitaskers. I'm interested in that 5% of people who can multitask. I'm also interested in the fact that there are a couple of existence proofs for skilled multitasking. One of them is any parent of a young child, or particularly of multiple young children, you know you've got to keep your eye on your toddler while they're moving towards the electrical socket with a fork in their hand, and the water's boiling on the stove, and the phone is ringing, and someone's at the door. Parenting is multitasking. You've got to be able to task switch. And then there's also fighter pilots. These are people who have to aviate, navigate, and communicate in 3 dimensions at very high speeds, and that's without somebody shooting at them. The question that arises is, are these people who are very good at multitasking, were they born that way, or did they learn how to do it? So when I talk about infotension, I'm really talking about how do we manage our attention online, because I think there's no argument that all of the online media afford distraction from whatever our primary tasks happen to be. It's pretty easy to just drift off into Twitter, or to click on a link, or to look at the latest cute cat video. How do we deal with that, not only distraction, but the sense of being overwhelmed by all this information coming in? So I believe that that's a combination of learning how to use online tools as filters, and learning how to consciously direct your attention when you're online. You know, for example, we all make decisions when we see a link. Are we going to click on that link right now? Are we going to open a tab and look at that later? Or are we going to bookmark it for much later? Those are decisions that we usually make without really thinking about it. So step 1 is asking my students to do that reflectively, to ask themselves why they are deciding to click on that link right now, or ignore it entirely, or bookmark it, or open a tab. And then to make them more rapidly, and again, somewhat unconsciously, the way you learn to ride a bicycle or drive a car, but to break that down and do it consciously. So a lot of this is about metacognition, about raising those decisions to the level of awareness and reflecting and analyzing why and how you're making those decisions. And I believe, again, I am not a researcher, and I'm not providing data as evidence for this, but I believe that people can learn to pay attention to their attention online. So we have a few more minutes here. Other questions? Oh, students use their devices in class. So for one thing, I ask my in-class students to move their chairs into a circle. There is no back row in a circle, and you're looking at each other. I also point out that if they think that the teacher doesn't know when they aren't paying attention, they're very much mistaken. I also say, I've got a 3-hour class. Sure, check your email. But what's going on in the class, whether I'm doing the talking or the other learners are doing the talking, that's our primary task. I ask them to be aware of the moment where they open their laptop, they're going to search on something that I said, they're going to ask a question of another student in chat, they're going to tweet something. At some point, that conscious decision becomes the unconscious decision to check Facebook or check their email. I ask them to wake up to that moment when they slide from intention to unintention. And we also do what I call attention probes in the classroom. So at a random interval, a student will ring a bell, and we'll all write down on colored Post-it notes what we're thinking. If it has to do with what we're talking about, we write it on a yellow Post-it note. If it's peripherally related, an orange Post-it note. If it has nothing to do with the subject we're discussing, a red Post-it note, all anonymously, and then we put them up on the whiteboard and get a kind of snapshot of our attention. I asked the co-teaching teams to come up with their own attention probes as well. One of them came up with a probe saying, when I hold a writing implement in my left hand, I want you to put your right thumb on the table. So lots of different exercises. Just the entire point, as I remind them, is to make what had been unconscious conscious, to become aware of where we're focusing our attention and why. And I tell them I can't really train them to do that. I can introduce them to that. They're adults. I'm not there to police them. They should police themselves.
All right. Are there any other questions? Howard, thank you so much. This has been amazing. The chat has been so active, and it's just great. I can tell everyone has really taken a lot and shared a lot in this session, so that's excellent.
Okay, thank you all.
Awesome.
Let's see. Pitch for Rheingold U. I've got a course on the literacy of cooperation that's coming up next week. If you're interested, email me, howard@rheingold.com. You'll see a lot of my material on learning at rheingold.com. There's a tab for learning. And in the fall, be prepared for this open online course. You follow me on Facebook or on Twitter. That's where I will publicize it. Also, DML Central will publicize it. And Steve Harganon will send out information to his folks. So, nice talking with you folks.
Thank you so much. And yes, please look for updates in the Learning Revolution newsletter and on the website. We will be gladly promoting this stuff. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording now.